this much anticipated press conference by the External Affairs Minister. This press conference, the first by the External Affairs Minister since he assumed this office, is on the occasion of 100 days of this ministry under the present government. We will start with the initial remarks by the Honorable Minister. After that, we will open the floor to questions. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ravish. Good afternoon, and let me say what a pleasure it is to see all of you again. This press conference, as JSXP just told you, is to share with you what we believe are our achievements over the first 100 days of the government. Before I come to that, let me emphasize that actually in the case of the Ministry of External Affairs, it started on day one with the invitation which was extended to leaders of the BIMSTEC to join in the inauguration, in the swearing-in ceremony of the new government. Now, I would like to provide you a little context here before we actually come to the achievements of the 100 days. And the context is the broad foreign policy approach. And I think all of you know that we've developed that conceptually quite a lot over the last 5 years. So I'll walk you a little bit through that concept and its evolution. But in the case of Ministry of External Affairs, you would also appreciate that a lot of the achievements, in a sense, this would be an activity-based account because a lot of it would be visits and interactions and conversations which would lead to outcome, some immediate but some over a longer period of time. So if I were to give you that context starting with foreign policy, and in a sense what is different in the foreign policy approach that we have been following, not just in the last 100 days but in the 5 years before that. To me, 2 or 3 very sharp points stand out. One, of course, is that much more than before, there is a linkage, a very strong linkage between what we are doing at home for national, economic and social progress and what we are doing abroad in terms of diplomacy. That we are leveraging global capabilities, global technology, global best practices, global resources, partnerships in many ways. And you can see that if you were to today look at a visit, incoming, outgoing, a summit, you see many more economic outcomes, more technology or project-based decisions, often, say, for example, whether it's smart cities or cleaning rivers, a lot of best practices. So the collaborations in many ways, I think, have become a much more salient part of foreign policy. And here there have been sort of 5, I would say, big hubs for this. North America, Europe, Northeast Asia, ASEAN and the Gulf. There are other relationships also which I will touch on. The second difference again would be a much stronger connection between our national security interests and foreign policy. That if you, again, whether you look at the relationship, you look at the activities, you look at the capabilities that we are trying to develop, this correlation between what are our national security goals and what are our foreign policy goals, I think, has also become very much stronger. Now, naturally, the foreign policy of every country, there is a standard international relations sort of exercise at play. Nations sort of compete with each other to increase their influence. Everybody wants to increase their footprint. But here, I think, again, my third point would be that our ability, our appetite to shape the global agenda today is very much more than it was before. And you can see that in an area like climate change. I think you will be seeing that as the SDGs implementation unfold. I think today, if you look at the big debates at multilateral forums, at G20, at BRICS, you will see that the Indian voice, the Indian views are today heard much more clearly. The diaspora is, of course, the fourth and in many ways a somewhat unique aspect of our foreign policy, and that is underlined by what is going to be coming up very soon in the United States, which is a big diaspora event in partnership with our Indian American community. In terms of how, again, we broadly see the world, there's a, we've had the view that there is a rebalancing going on in the world, that the world is moving towards growing multipolarity. And growing multipolarity really means multiple narratives, that India has to be seen, India has to be heard, India has to be, in a sense, contributing in many ways, and India's personality on the international stage has to express itself. That's happened, say, through a vehicle like the International Day of Yoga in the past, but in the immediate, particularly in the last 100 years, a lot of our energies have gone into the celebrations and events, the commemoration events which mark the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi and the 550th anniversary of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Now, in addition to all of that, I think we, of course, like any other country, would want to put out our narrative, our specific interests. And in the last 100 days, again, some of that has gone to the message of change, the vote of confidence that the government got from the electorate, the fact that we are back, what that means. Also issues like, which have had some foreign policy resonance, like the changes to Article 370, and of course some of the longer standing issues, especially cross-border terrorism. Now, in terms of what we have seen, and I would say in the last 100 days, the first circle of priority is neighborhood, and rightly we call it neighborhood first. And again, many of you are familiar, neighborhood first is about connectivity, it's about commerce, it's about contacts. And we've had Prime Minister, in fact, begin his foreign travel, as he did previously, in the neighborhood with Maldives. Since then, he's been to Sri Lanka. I mean, after Maldives, he went to Sri Lanka, he's been to Bhutan. And I myself have covered Bhutan, Maldives, Bangladesh, Nepal. And we've had incoming visits from Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and Afghanistan as well. And what we do expect to see going forward is a continuation of this generous, non-reciprocal policy towards our neighbors, which will focus a lot on projects, on people-to-people contacts, on business contacts. And we hope really to build a stronger, better neighborhood, but recognizing that we have a unique challenge from one neighbor, and that until the issue of cross-border terrorism is successfully addressed, and until that neighbor becomes a normal neighbor, that would remain a challenge. Moving on in the extended neighborhood, again, in many ways, you know that there were initially political sort of divides after independence, which prevented us really from harnessing the full possibilities of culture and history and economics out there. But today, between look east towards ASEAN and what we are doing in the West, and in fact, Foreign Secretary has just come back today from Iran, we've really done, I think, an enormous amount to change the relationship, change perceptions of India, both to the East and the West. In the East, a lot of that is centered around connectivity, security, and our support for ASEAN centrality. It is transposed on achievements which we've already had in business, diaspora, and culture. In terms of the contacts over the last 100 days, Prime Minister met many of the leaders of this region at the G20. I went to Indonesia, to Singapore. I went for the ARF in Thailand. In the West, it's equally important. It's been a newer story. This has been, in fact, largely over the last 5 years that we've taken the relationship to where it is today. Well, it's always been important in terms of energy and diaspora. I think today you have a very large investment relationship, an important security, stability relationship, where we have a lot of common shared concerns on radicalization and counterterrorism. And again, there's been a lot of focus here. Prime Minister went to UAE and to Bahrain. You know that he got the highest awards in these countries. I hosted the UAE Foreign Minister very soon after assuming office. Our Minister of State went to Kuwait. I think he's in Iraq today. We have, among the activities of the last 100 days, we have facilitated our naval deployment in the Straits of Hormuz, and we've supported more than 200,000 Hajj pilgrims going for the Hajj. Now, moving beyond in terms of major powers, we've had our endeavor, of course, is to have the best relations with all these powers so that our options, our positioning is the best. And in the last 100 days, actually, Prime Minister has met the leaders of all the P5 plus 2, plus Germany and Japan. And I met all the foreign ministers except the German, who I hope to meet soon. And some of these were at multilaterals, but we've had a dedicated bilateral summit with Russia at Vladivostok for the Prime Minister, with France during his visit there. I have myself been to China. I also had a bilateral with Japan. And while we did all of this, I think we did this taking full advantage today of a lot of multilateral events, of global opportunities which these conclaves provide. And it tells you today something about the nature of diplomacy, and more important, about India's standing. That if you look even at the last 100 days, I mean, we've had the G20 summit, the G7 summit, the Shanghai Cooperation Summit, the Vladivostok, the Economic Forum, the Far East Economic Forum, the CICA Summit, the ARF meeting, the BRICS, Commonwealth, and we had, of course, BIMSTEC out here. And we've really taken full advantage of this. Prime Minister is extraordinarily energetic, and the rest of us try to emulate that also. So we use each of these opportunities to the extent we can, and I would say I hesitate to give the numbers. I think he probably would have it, but we would really be at least in the middle. He says 28 for Prime Minister's meetings. Mine would be more, partly because of more events that I've attended. In Africa also, we've been very active in the last 100 days, and we regard it today as a focus continent. Our vision for Africa was spelled out by Prime Minister last July at Uganda. And the 18 embassies which we have decided to open are all in Africa. They are opening, many of them as we speak. And we actually had a sort of, in the last week, we had a sort of analysis of, sitting with the AU, a stock taking of where we are. And I think we are largely on track in terms of our Africa commitments. We had made a commitment of $10 billion of lines of projects in lines of credit in Africa. We've crossed 6.5. We've committed to $600 million of grant. We've actually reached 700 million. We had agreed to train 50,000 people in different areas. We've reached 40,000. So the Africa account has been actually extremely energetic. Honorable Rashtrapati Ji had visited Benin, Gambia, and Guinea. In fact, the first head of state visit we hosted was from Zambia, and Minister of State Multipolarity Ji has gone to Nigeria, Cameroon, Togo, and Cote d'Ivoire. We've also seen activity in Central Asia. Prime Minister went to Kyrgyzstan for the SCO summit. I went to Tajikistan for the SICA summit. Europe has also received a lot of attention in the last 5 years. Prime Minister himself has led from the front. And again, we see Europe as an important development partner, as for technology capabilities of various kinds. And the fact that we are market economy, the fact that we are democratic societies, I think brings us together. And here again, President has been to Iceland, Switzerland, Slovenia. Vice President's been to the 3 Baltic countries. I have engaged both the outgoing and the incoming European Commission leadership, been to UK, Poland, Hungary, and Belgium. And of course, we've had meetings with all the major European leaders at the multilaterals. The picture in Latin America and Caribbean is also moving along. Minister of State, and I must tell you, we expect in these 5 years actually to give this region much more attention than we did in the last 5. So Minister of State has been to Argentina, Peru, Colombia, and the Dominican Republic. General V.K. Singh, who was minister with us earlier, went to Brazil. And we've had incoming visits from St. Vincent and Grenadines, and today, in fact, I had met the Foreign Minister of Grenada. We are concentrating a lot on the CARICOM, with which again we have a very strong historical cultural bonding. We hope to see more of them at the UNGA. And again, you have a variant of this story in Oceania. We will be dealing more with FIPIC. Again, we expect to see them at the UNGA. I've had incoming visits from New Zealand, from the leader of opposition, and there have been meetings both between PM and me where Australia is concerned. So this is a sort of a broad activity story. In terms of practical achievements, a sort of bricks and mortar kind of level achievements, we've actually, even in 100 days, there are projects which we concluded. There are projects which we concluded and inaugurated. There are projects which we have had milestones. There are projects where we have commenced. So I can tell you again, this is a ministry which is today extremely focused on delivering on development assistance abroad. And among the examples, we were the first country to actually complete a project in the Rakhine state. We built 250 houses there. They're ready to go. With Nepal, Prime Minister inaugurated the Motihari Amlekanj pipeline. We have completed 50,000 houses, which we had committed to do after the Nepal earthquake in Nuwakot and Gorkha districts. In Bhutan, Prime Minister inaugurated the Mangdechu Dam. He also inaugurated the Earthlink station. And in Bangladesh, in fact, again, we've just completed the first vocational training institute at Khulna. We've started work on the Parvatipur-Siliguri high-speed diesel, what we call friendship pipeline. We've also started work on the Agartala-Akhora railway line. We've had in Sri Lanka the inauguration of the 1990 ambulance service, which enjoys enormous popularity there in the eastern province in Nampare. We have in Maldives completed and inaugurated the composite training facility for the Maldivian Defense Forces, 2 coastal surveillance radars as well. Prime Minister promised during his visit the renovation of Friday Mosque, and we've already started work of that in Maldives. In Mauritius, we've completed the ENT hospital. In Kenya, for example, we've just finished a textile factory. In Cambodia, we've done a clinic and a school. And all of this, I'm giving you as a snapshot of really what's happened in the last 100 days. And you can expect, this pace of work to really carry on for the next 5 years. Now, while I've spoken largely of our ministry, I must also acknowledge the partnerships with other ministries, which is so central for us to deliver on the practical aspects of our foreign policy. Here, I must particularly recognize the Department of Posts, because they've been a very, very positive, energetic partner in the spread of our passport seva kendras through the country. We are doing it today by locating them in post offices. In the last 100 days, we have opened 6 more. I just opened one this weekend at Rajpipla in Gujarat. And similarly, we have partnered with the Human Resources Development Ministry. Yesterday, we had a function here. This was our largest initiative with the ASEAN, where we announced 1,000 postdoctoral scholarships at IITs, which I think would certainly in educational cooperation in science and technology side would be among our major initiatives. So that broadly is a picture, and I would be remiss if I did not also acknowledge actually the support that we've got from the Ministry of Finance. When I looked at our budget figures, I felt that they had done justice to a foreign policy which was more ambitious, which had a larger vision. In fact, when I look back, today the foreign ministry's budget is about 40% higher than where it was in 2014. So that gives you a sort of a sense of how much support we have got from the Ministry of Finance. So let me conclude by saying really my sense of these 100 days is that we have picked up on where we left off over a 5-year period. I think the sort of the vehicle is already in 4th, if not 5th gear. And I would say this with great objectivity. I think the record over the last 5 years has been very much that the country's standing in the world has gone up. I think people recognize it. I think the Indian people recognize it, and it was one of the many factors for the vote of confidence which was given to the Modi government. So I'm very today very honored, very privileged to lead the MEA team to take the last 5 years forward for the next 5. So once again, thank you for your attention, and I'd be delighted to take any questions you have.
Thank you very much, sir. Before we move into the Q&A round, 3 simple points. Even if I identify yourself, please do introduce yourself, your name and the organization's name. 1 question. Please avoid linked question. And the third, which is very important, is that we will try to cover one topic in one go. So if, for example, the first question relates to the neighborhood, we will try to cover that topic before we move to the next topic, so that we can cover as many topics as possible in the limited time which we have. So we can start with the first one. Siddhant.
Hi, Sam. Siddhant from Beyond. My question is on India-US relationship. We know the Indian Prime Minister will be going and meeting him 3rd time perhaps in this year. There are contentious issues, trade being the topmost. When can we see this issue being resolved? When can we expect a resolution or perhaps a trade deal?
I will take other questions on US as well, India-US relationship. Manish. And then Manish in front of
Manish Chan, the India Rights Network. Prime Minister is going to be meeting President Trump twice, once in Texas and once in New York. When we talk about the quality of India-US relationship, you know, I mean, there, apart from the contentious issues, there is also President Trump's unpredictability, especially his notorious flip-flops on the Kashmir issue. Where do you see, I mean, with this kind of unpredictability, where do you see the issues dissolving themselves? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manish. Smita, you have a question?
Smita Sharma. Several US congressmen, military committees have raised concerns about the human rights situation in Kashmir. As the Prime Minister heads there, and the External Affairs Ministry has been doing much firefighting about the internal situation in the state, is there any assessment that you have in terms of by when can at least the political detentions, be phased out, it's going to get over, or is the detention going to be a normal till the neighborhood state, till the neighbor doesn't turn into a normal state?
Smita, this pertains to perhaps a later topic. We are only talking about India-US relationship. Manish, you have a question?
सर मैं मनीष झा हूँ TV9 भारतवर्ष से, और मेरा सवाल ये है कि 4 दिन बाद जब प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी और प्रेसिडेंट ट्रंप दोनों एक ही मंच पर होंगे, 50,000 से ज़्यादा लोगों की भीड़ होगी, तो कश्मीर पर भारत के फैसले के बाद ये कैसा मैसेज होगा पाकिस्तान के लिए या दुनिया के लिए, जब दो बड़े देश के नेता एक साथ मंच पर होंगे।
Nanima, you have one? Maybe sir, the last one before.
Nanima Basu from the print. Do we plan to ask for a waiver on the Iran sanctions, so-called, from the US, as far as the waiver is concerned on purchasing oil from Iran? Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Well, look, there are some common elements in the questions which you have asked. So rather than go question by question, I'd go sort of subject by subject. Let me start with India-US and the trade issue. I think somebody described it as contentious. Somebody used the word unpredictable. That was not the relationship, that was a person. But first of all, let me make this point that India-US relations have come a long way. Look today at the quality of the relationship, look at the amount of trade, look at the political comfort, look at the security cooperation, look at the movement of people, whether you look at the business, at students, at research. There is no facet of the relationship today which hasn't sort of gone upwards really over the last 20 years. And it has gone through repeated changes of administration. Because Democrat, Clinton, then George Bush, then Obama, then Trump, and the trajectory was always upwards. And even today, even as we are planning, for example, like an event like Houston, the thinking is from our side is actually very bipartisan. And from their side also, the approach is very bipartisan. So the first thing I want to reassure all of you, the relationship is in very good health. Okay, I'm very satisfied about what has happened in the last few years. I'm very optimistic about where we are going. Now, as the relationship grows, as any relationship grows, there will be issues. The only way you cannot have a trade problem is if you don't trade. And trade problem, by the way, often happens with people you are closest to, because actually it's with them that you do the most trade. So its trade problems are normal. In fact, in many ways, they're reflective of a very substantial relationship. So now let me give you my prognosis on the trade issues. We've been talking to the Americans. We've engaged them for many months now. Certainly that in that 100-day record, this is not my remit, it is CIM's remit, but certainly there have been a lot of conversations over the last 100 days. And I have always been optimistic that, the time will come when after a lot of these exchanges, mostly at a bureaucratic level, there would be an effort to take it to a higher level, then sit down and see where we can find a sort of a common ground where there's give and take, and find ways by which it works for both of us. So my expectation is that, some of the sharper edges that many of you seem to have picked up, that they would be addressed in some form in the not too distant future. Exactly which ones? All that is really the Commerce Minister's remit. But again, I would say, even if I were to take that as a given, I would point to you a glass which is 90% full, rather than a glass which is 10% empty. I will look at all the actually activities, the business deals which are taking place, and take that really as the state of the relationship. Now, there was a reference to, there were a number of issues, questions about centering around Houston. Okay. Look, the Houston event is the third time the Prime Minister would be doing a major community event in the US. Madison Square Garden was the first in 2014, San Jose was the second, 2015, and then he hasn't been to the US at any length of time till now, so Houston is the third. And I regard this as a great achievement of the Indian American community. That if today there is an event of this size and you have someone like President Trump coming there, I think this shows really where that community has reached, how it is regarded in the United States, the respect that it commands out there. The fact, I mean, we will see in Houston what the turnout is. I think in many ways it is obviously achievement of the community. Having said that, I mean, there's no question that the community definitely today stands more motivated, more inspired, more united by the fact that somebody like Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister. So I have every expectation, having seen and participated in the earlier two events, that this too would be extremely successful. Now, regarding President Trump's presence there, I mean, I think it is a matter of great honor that he has chosen to come there to accept the invitation from the community to be there. And obviously we would welcome President Trump in the warmest possible manner. Now, there were two questions regarding, what is the, I think it was your question, message to Pakistan, etc. Look, finally, countries develop a reputation. Okay. I think, if I remember, it was in Kabul, or I think it was in Herat, Prime Minister made that remark about information technology versus international terrorism. How one country both have reputations for IT, but IT means different things. So today, I mean, my sense is it's not just Pakistan. I think whole world will be watching the Houston event and take lessons from there about what Indian Americans have achieved, what India and the United States, the state of the relationship today. So I think there are multiple messages there. I mean, obviously, it's for the Pakistanis to read what they wish to into it, and I would say the same applies to other people in the world as well. And look, beyond a point, don't worry too much about what is the what will people say on Jammu and Kashmir, etc. Because let me tell you one thing: there is complete predictability about my position. Okay, my position has been clear since 1972, and my position not going to change. And at the end of the day, it is my issue. So on my issue, my position has prevailed, will prevail. So don't worry too much about those aspects of it. Regarding the Iran sanction issue, look, we have had conversations with the Americans on Iran. Our interest is in affordable, predictable supply of energy. There have been, Iran is, the situation is not a static situation. There are a lot of conversations. There are a lot of moving parts to this issue, some of which surfaced at the G7 meetings on the sidelines. So let's see where it goes. I left out one question there, I think yours, Smita. Look, you've had people in the Congress, some of them, making comments or writing letters or whatever it is. I've spent a lot of my working life dealing with the US, and in fact I started by dealing with the US Congress. US Congress says a lot of things because people go to individual members of Congress. Now what they say is not necessarily a function of their knowledge on that particular subject. Okay, they say things often because somebody comes to them and says, I think you need to say this. Sometimes they could have a view, and mostly the views would be transposed from their own experience. But to anybody, I expect to be in Washington at some point of time fairly soon. And frankly, if I were to meet a member of the Congress who raises any of these issues, I would ask them, saying, look, you have confronted terrorism, what was your response? You have confronted separatism in your history. What was your response? Would you be impassive if, let us say, affirmative action was not implemented, or if gender justice was not delivered, or if the laws of your country did not apply to one part of the country. So ask yourself the same questions I'm asking myself. And if after all that you still have a point of view, then I'd be happy to talk to you.
Just one sec. We move to the second topic. Ashish.
Good evening, sir. This is Ashish Singh from NYOOOZ. I have a question related to China. There have been a lot of reports of some confrontation or skirmish along the LAC between India and China. It has been raised by the armies, and it has been raised by one of the BJP MPs as well. And there were some reports of the Chinese nuclear submarine also being detected by the Indian surveillance aircraft. Any of these things have been raised by the Indian government in the diplomatic structure with China, either the embassy or Beijing level? And any confirmation on development on Xi Jinping's arrival location and date in India?
Thank you, Ashish. Any other question on India-China relationship? Akhilesh ji?
So, in relation with China, I have a question regarding that Chinese ships have been seen, coming closer to our establishment in Vietnam near South China Sea, and there are also reports that 7 of the ships, naval ships, who are also having equipped with fighter, machines, they are in Indian Ocean. So, what type of relationship we are predicting with China in face of Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to have informal summit with President Xi Jinping?
Thank you. Here, second row.
Sir, Rishikesh from Sputnik News. Sir, can you elaborate the progress regarding the collaboration collaboration with China in third country? That what we have seen that in Afghanistan that we are providing skill development or like this.
Thank you. Indrani, you have a question, right?
So Wang Yi, not in his foreign minister avatar, but in his special representative avatar, was supposed to come here earlier this month, but he didn't. And we were told that we rescheduled the meeting. If you could tell us why, and if you have a sense, could you give us when we might expect the next round of border talks with the Chinese?
Thank you. I'll take 2 more questions. Rajesh.
Good evening, sir. This is Rajesh from the Wall Street Journal. Wanted to ask you, what's the government's stand on allowing Huawei to participate in 5G trial? Are we going by what US says, or we will be adhering to our national interest?
Thank you, Rajesh. Can you pass on the mic at this end?
I'm Stacy from Hong Kong Phoenix TV. And we see that a lot of journalists raised here already about recent challenges and also some old issues between India and China. And last year we see the informal summit, and there's a Wuhan summit. And the Wuhan spirit is the main thing, and how it make India-China's relation in the past 1 year. And now the second informal...
Now, can I get a question?
Oh, yeah.
The second considering a question, not giving a...
Yeah. The second informal summit is coming, and how do you see the Wuhan spirit really working for India and China relation, or there's going to be another spirit? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, okay.
Just to add to China, we have seen how China has positioned itself vis-a-vis Kashmir or with Pakistan on Kashmir. Were we a little lukewarm vis-a-vis Hong Kong with China? Like we were not very as strong as the Chinese were with the Pakistanis on Kashmir?
Thank you. Sandeep, second row.
Sam Sandeep Dikshit with the Tribune. In Beijing, you had said that India has no designs beyond the LAC and the LOC.
That's not correct. I didn't say that.
So if you could
Please come to the question.
I can tell you what I said later, but that's not accurate.
Is that the question already?
No, I was going to go ahead, but if it's not accurate, then I can't
Thank you.
pursue with it.
Last row, second last row, Venkatji.
Is there any rethink on our position on the border road initiative? The Chinese, will that figure in Mr. Xi Jinping's meeting with Mr. Modi? Thank you.
I think so we have exhausted all the questions. Sir.
Thank you. So let me start with what's happening, what happened on the border. Look, first of all, we didn't have a skirmish. I want to be very clear. I think there was what is called a face-off, and it was resolved. And from time to time, that has happened, and it has happened because you have differing perceptions of the line of actual control, and patrols meet. And sometimes that kind of situation happens. Now, there are mechanisms, a lot of effort has gone into mechanisms and procedures to address such situations. And in this particular case, I think the mechanisms kicked into play and they did address that. And that's happened in the past as well. There were two questions about Chinese ships reports of Chinese ships being in waters. Look, that's really an operational matter for the Navy. I don't think it's a diplomatic matter unless, there is some sovereignty violation for us. So I really, on that kind of issue, which is not our MEA domain, I don't have the knowledge and I wouldn't want to make a comment. On the President Xi Jinping coming here for the next informal summit, I think you'll have to be a little patient, and my friend here would be making his remarks, his announcement when we are ready to do that. Regarding South China Sea issue, we are working there in conjunction with the Vietnamese, and I think a lot of the responses to that are being handled by the Vietnamese, which is the way it should be. Are we doing third country projects? To the best of my knowledge, I think we did one for training on diplomats, Afghan diplomats. I think at the moment we haven't gone beyond that. On this question of Wang Yi as State Councillor reschedule, look, I do want, and this is not specific to this particular question, often people float dates, okay? For me, no dates are dates until Ravish Kumar says so, because, you get speculation of various kinds then, because let's say you take a visit, somebody offers me 3 sets of dates, okay? And often it comes out in public, or maybe one part of it comes out in public. Then somehow impression is created that we committed to something and we didn't do it. We don't take a call until we actually take a public call. And until we take that public call, and it even relates to other issues we've discussed, don't take that as a final decision. There was no rescheduling. So at this moment, I think the National Security Advisor, who's our representative SR for those talks, he was preoccupied. So it was one of those things which didn't happen. So I don't think more should be read into that. Regarding Huawei, look, we will take a call not just on Huawei, we'll take a call on 5G, once I believe there's a complicated process of trials and, how that moves. Again, I think people are unnecessarily politicizing it. This is about telecom, it's for, the telecom department to look at it, there are technology implications. There could be other implications which whoever is the other agency would look at it. But somehow again the impression that, this is a choice which is going to be a sort of a foreign policy choice. I don't think that's accurately perceiving or assessing that issue. On the Wuhan spirit, what is it we are talking about? We are actually talking about a very unique meeting between leaders of two important countries who spent 2 days in very comfortable, open conversation with each other on a range of subjects. And, you know, it wasn't, in the past, a lot of our discussions were very choreographed, they were very formal, they were with a pre-set agenda, whereas this was much more open, it was much more freewheeling, and the real value that we saw in it was that it is important for India and China, who are both countries who are rising powers, to find equilibriums, because, you know, each one of them has their own expectation of the world and of each other. Now, the sort of the principles that underlay, in a sense, the Wuhan conversations were from Astana, which was that our relationship should be a source of stability in an uncertain world, and also that where we have differences, those differences should not become disputes. Now, all of that remains so. So, I'm sure as and when the second informal summit happens, that, you know, it will be it will happen in as warm a spirit as Wuhan, or maybe warmer, depending on the temperature of the location of that place. But you know, my sense is that commitment to have those kinds of conversations remains strong on both sides. Somebody asked me something on Hong Kong. You know, there are developments in Hong Kong. Obviously, you know, given that we have investments there and we have a community there, we are watching it with great attention. On the, yes, you know, your question, Sandeep, about what I said. Look, I didn't say about, let me tell you what my recollection of what I said, and my recollection should be reasonably good. I actually said that what we have done has not changed the external boundaries of India. Okay, that was what I said. And regarding the BRI rethink, the answer is no.
Just hold on. Vinita? Let us see what the question is first.
So my question is on Pakistan. Versus the abrogation of Article 370 has happened. We have seen Pakistan trying to internationalize a bilateral issue, which was something which was bilateral so far, you know, using threats to jihad and nuclear and weapons and war. The world has responded saying that it is an internal matter of India. So do you think that we still can have a bilateral dialogue with Pakistan, and can Kashmir be part of that, among the issues that can be discussed with Pakistan?
Thank you, Vinita. Sir, we will take all questions on Pakistan plus neighborhood. Pranay?
सर प्रणय उपाध्याय एबीपी न्यूज से आप यूएनजीए के साइडलाइन पे जो सार्क फॉरेन मिनिस्टर्स की मीटिंग होगी आप उसमें अटेंड करेंगे, तो पाकिस्तान के फॉरेन मिनिस्टर से जब आप रूबरू होंगे तो क्या मैसेज होगा जो आप कन्वे करना चाहेंगे, और खास तौर पर पाकिस्तान की तरफ से जिस तरीके की जिहादिस्ट लैंग्वेज आई है भारत और भारत के नेताओं के खिलाफ, उसको लेके क्या मैसेज सार्क के प्लेटफॉर्म से आप कन्वे करना चाहेंगे पाकिस्तान को?
थैंक यू. आई विल गो टू दिस साइड. रंजीत जी.
Mr. Minister, India has sacrificed a lot and contributed a lot for peace and development in Afghanistan. In spite of this, India has been sidelined from the peace process. How do you view the emergence of Taliban as a major factor in Afghanistan and the possibility of Taliban taking over government in Afghanistan?
Thank you. Second row here.
Sir, this NRC issue is going on. And NRC issue, CAB, and setting up tribunals. Tribunals agenda is detection and deportation. These three issues are interlinked, and concern with the foreigners issues. And still, you are not taking. India government is not taking up this issue with the Dhaka. And you said this is our domestic issue. How it can be domestic issue? Please elaborate, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. फोर्थ रो.
मैं सर श्रीकांत भाटिया हूं, संवाद सिंधी न्यूज़पेपर है सर मेरा. सर पाकिस्तान में पिछले 2 दिन से हिंदू सिंधियों के मंदिरों पे अटैक किए जा रहे हैं, कल एक सिंधी लड़की का वहां पे मर्डर हो गया और काफी तोड़फोड़ मंदिरों में की जा रही है, काफी मीडिया में भी आया है। भारत सरकार ने इस बहुत ही करंट इशू को किस संज्ञान में लिया?
थैंक यू। परीक्षित।
Sir, in the last 100 days, we've seen a lot of emphasis in broadening our energy imports. We have been saying that we don't want to be dependent on any one particular country. Having said that, sir, where do you see the energy relationship with Iran going? Do you think this aspect of our bilateral relationship with our traditional energy partner Iran has suffered? And do you think the recent attack on the Saudi Aramco refinery, the US is now blaming Iran for it, does this complicate India's position further?
Thank you. Back row, the last row. Kalol.
So do you think our actions in Kashmir is hurting our international image?
Thank you. Maha.
Sir, this is on Pakistan with regards to Kulbhushan Jadhav. Why did India change its position within a span of a month on unimpeded consular access to Kulbhushan Jadhav? Will we be seeking another meeting with Kulbhushan Jadhav?
Thank you. We split it here. We will take another round of questions on Pakistani neighborhood. Sir.
Okay. The first question related to 370 bilateral, international. Will you still have a dialogue? Look, I mean, first of all, 370 is not a bilateral issue. 370 is an internal issue. Now, with regard to Pakistan, the issue is not 370. The issue is Pakistan's terrorism. So again, there's no change really, and how can there be? I mean, we must sort of make the world realize, and we do that. I mean, when I go abroad, I always ask other people saying, show me anywhere else in the world where any country conducts terrorism openly against its neighbor as part of what it considers its foreign policy. So until the terrorism issue, what should come on the table, first of all, is the terrorism issue. Because that is the root cause of the state of the relationship. So I think there has to be a recognition of that. On what happens if or when, whatever, I meet the Pakistani foreign minister on the sidelines of UNG. Well, we'll see when that happens. So we were, I think, we were together meeting at the same place during the Commonwealth Foreign Ministers meeting in London. So, these are international events, but where SAARC is concerned, my message would be this. SAARC is about regional cooperation. So what do you need for regional cooperation? You need trade, on an MFN basis. You need connectivity. You don't need terrorism. So if you were to look at the future of SAARC, which country is today actually promoting SAARC and which country is today impeding SAARC? I think that's an issue which all of SAARC needs to reflect on, and I'm pretty confident every other member of SAARC knows what the answer to those questions are. On this issue of Afghanistan, look, let me tell you, we are wired in to pretty much what's happening in Afghanistan on a fairly regular basis and a fairly effective basis. So again, somehow I don't need to be at the formal meetings to have influence or have a view or shape the outcome. There are many ways. I mean, for me, first of all, having a relationship, a good, strong relationship with different political forces and the government in Afghanistan, that itself is a huge asset that I have. So I wouldn't be that shall I say, defensive about where we are on Afghanistan. We have interests, we have views, we know how to make those felt. And I can tell you that as developments will happen, you will see that there are ways by which Indian diplomacy will make its interests and its objectives understood and factored in by the international community. On the NRC issue, look, what is NRC? NRC is an enumeration of citizens that any country does. I mean, it is obviously a sovereign right of a country. And the NRC exercise is obviously an internal exercise. So that is the limited point which we have made. Regarding Pakistan, minorities in Pakistan, I think the numbers which, this is not a new thing. I mean, here is a country which today is waxing eloquent about other nations. I mean, look at their treatment of minorities. I think the minority numbers have come down dramatically in the last 70 years, I think to a point where they probably don't even put it out publicly anymore. And what is happening now in Sindh, I mean, that's not the only thing which has happened in the last 100 days. You had also those cases of abductions of those Sikh girls. So there is a continuing story, and it's pretty pervasive in that country. And I think if there is today really a human rights audit, objective human rights audit in this part of the world, I can pretty confidently assert who will come last in it. Regarding energy issues with Iran, our interest today is in access to affordable and predictable energy sources. We are in dialogue with all suppliers, including Iran. I think the issues which have come up are not of our making. I think the Iranians understand that. So we have to see, whether the landscape changes and what the possibilities thereafter hold. On your, somebody asked a question there, Kashmir and international image. I think the international community understands by and large what our objectives were in modifying Article 370. I think as you explained to them that this was a temporary provision, which is not something which often, I don't see that word used so often in the analysis of events. But when you tell people, look, this is the history of Article 370, that it was a temporary provision. The meaning of the word temporary is that it has to come to an end. That this provision had actually become dysfunctional, that it was being arbitraged by a narrow set of people for their own gains, and that by doing that they were impeding development, and that lack of development was feeding a sense of separatism, and that separatism actually has been utilized by Pakistan to carry out cross-border terrorism. I think most people do understand that flow of logic out there. And if you pose to them this question that, look, here's an incoming government. An incoming government, what does it do? It has two choices. Either it continues the policies of the last 30 odd years, and the casualties, the costs of all of that. So we know what didn't work for 30 years. So choice one is what did not work should be continued for the future. Or choice two is try and do something very differently and to try to change the landscape and find actually more effective answers for what is a very challenging situation. And again, if you put all of this, and they are well aware of the cross-border terrorism. I mean, there's today no country in the world which says that is not happening. So my own sense is that there is a growing understanding of what the logic of doing all of this is about. And finally, on the Kulbhushan Yadav issue. Look, on the Kulbhushan Yadav issue, our objective was one, to seek access to him, to to ascertain his well-being. At the same time, seeking access to him was one step in eventually, providing that remedy which the International Court of Justice has mandated it should, and finally, finding a solution which would bring an innocent person back to his country. Now, we had to look at a variety of factors and really see what is the importance you put at this time to ascertaining his well-being. And we thought that ascertaining his well-being is a priority issue at this point, and we wanted to begin the proceedings, however unsatisfactory they may be. Whether the Pakistanis carried out in letter and spirit what the International Court of Justice wanted them to do, I think the answer is obvious to all of you. But nevertheless, I think there was the well-being factor in our mind.
The Minister has already answered. We move to the last round of questions on neighborhood plus any other topic. Geeta Mohan.
Dr. Jayashankar, Geeta Mohan from India Today. Just wanted clarity on the issue of Zakir Naik. There was a statement by the Malaysian Prime Minister that Prime Minister Modi in his meeting did not seek extradition of Zakir Naik. Foreign Secretary Gokhale during his briefing had said that the matter had come up to a specific question on extradition. We just want clarity on what was discussed when the two leaders met.
Thank you. Madhurendra and then Mukesh.
सर जो प्रत्यर्पण मधुरेंद्र दिस साइड न्यूज़ नेशन से जो प्रत्यर्पण को लेकर सवाल है खास तौर पे उन भगोड़े अपराधियों का, उसमें विजय माल्या का भी नाम भी है, मेहुल चौकसी भी है, नीरव मोदी भी है. 100 डेज में कोई ऐसा अपडेट नहीं आया जिसे अचीवमेंट के तौर पे शुमार किया जाए. आगे इस पर कुछ अपडेट देना चाहेंगे कि आखिरकार किस तरह से सरकार मूव कर रही है, ताकि जो जनता से वायदा आपकी सरकार ने किया है कि इन भगोड़ों को वापस लाया जाएगा, उस संदर्भ में कुछ आश्वस्त किया जा सके पब्लिक को.
थैंक यू. मुकेश जी.
Sir, this is Mukesh Kaushik from Dainik Bhaskar. Sir, days after Parliament decided to abrogate Article 370, Pakistan Prime Minister in one of his interactions said that there is no point left anymore talking to India. अब तो हिंदुस्तान से बात करने का कोई मतलब नहीं रह गया जी, उन्होंने ये कहा. Do you feel the same way that there is no point talking to this not so normal neighbor, or do you feel that there are issues which can be discussed with this abnormal neighbor too?
Last row.
सर मैं ब्रह्म प्रकाश हूँ जी न्यूज़ से. मेरा सवाल पाक ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर को लेकर है. कश्मीर से धारा 370 खत्म होने के बाद ये माना जा रहा है कि सरकार का फोकस पाक ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर को वापस लेने के लिए हो गया है. क्या डिप्लोमेटिक चैनल के जरिए सरकार प्रयास करेगी पाक ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर को वापस लेने के लिए, क्योंकि आपके कलीग गृह मंत्री भी कह चुके हैं कि अब पाकिस्तान से बात होगी तो पाक ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर पर ही होगी, तो क्या हमारा ये शिफ्ट हो गया है?
शुभजीत.
Sir, when the Prime Minister goes to the UNGA, there would be international pressure on him to have a bilateral dialogue with Pakistan. Do you think there's a possibility of a meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan on the sidelines of UNGA?
Thank you. Second row.
Sir, this is Asim Kamal from Press Trust of India. So my question is that have all the issues relating to the Kartarpur corridor been resolved, and will it be opening in November as stated by Pakistan?
The last and final question, Amiti.
Sir, I'm Amity Sen from the Hindu business line. Yes, sir. Sir, my question is on the ongoing RCEP negotiations, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. We have seen the industry expressing a lot of concerns, over they have concerns that there would be a big surge in imports, especially from China, if we sign this agreement and the import duties on most items are reduced to zero. We've also seen farmer groups coming out protesting against the proposed, against the agreement because they fear that wheat, even dairy items could basically, the domestic industry would suffer because of that. So do we see a conflict emerging between our diplomatic and trade interests here? And going forward, if, with our trade interests in mind, if we feel that we have to say no to this agreement, will it be acceptable from a diplomatic point of view?
No, let the minister answer. Sir, you want to take more? डिफरेंट होना चाहिए बिल्कुल आपने कहा है
Good evening, sir. I'm George Kalevail from Deepika. My question is that Pope Francis really openly said that he wanted to visit India. And in fact, he told me in a press conference on his onboard way back from Bangladesh and Myanmar trip that he wanted to come soon. What is the possibility right now? Because it didn't materialize during the last Modi government.
Okay. Thank you. Let me start with the Zakir Naik issue. Look, if my memory serves me right, we filed our extradition request in January of 2018. And from January of 2018, we have been persistently, relentlessly pursuing this matter at all levels. Now, my understanding, I was not at Vladivostok, but my understanding of the Vladivostok meeting was that the Zakir Naik issue did come up and that the expectation was communicated from our side that the officials concerned should meet quickly and sort out this matter, obviously to our satisfaction. So, but since you raised the matter, let me make it very clear for the record that there is an extradition request for Zakir Naik. We want Zakir Naik back, and that is what we are working towards. So let me be very clear on that score. On the absconders update, I think in the last 100 days I cannot recollect any major development, but please bear in mind that this is not an issue, most of these are legal issues. So the timing of this, the calendar of legal proceedings is not something that we are in a position to determine. Then somebody asked a question saying that the Prime Minister of Pakistan had said that there's no point talking to India. Look, part of the problem with Pakistan is it's been only doing talking. It's not been doing anything on terrorism. That they think that nice words are a sort of answer to the real problem, and the real problem is the dismantlement of this industry that they have created. So the question is not today, whether what can you talk about. At the end of the day, it goes back to what I told you, which is for any neighbor, and this is not an India issue. I mean, show me a country in the world which will accept that its neighbor can conduct terrorism and then it will go and talk to the neighbor. So our position is completely normal, rational. They are the set of people whose behavior is an aberration. The abnormality is there. So I think our position cannot be clearer than what I have spelled out earlier. And on POK, yes, our position on POK has always been and will always be very clear. POK is part of India, and we expect one day that it will we will have the jurisdiction, physical jurisdiction over it. Regarding UNGA, whether there will be a meeting between the leaders of India and Pakistan. I mean, in principle, I don't comment on what can happen, and I'm not talking of this particular issue. But you saw me answer questions on China and even on the US on this matter. But I think just before you ask me that question, since you've asked that question, just look at the climate of relations right now. I think that itself should give you the answer that you are looking at. On Kartarpur Sahib, my understanding is that most of the issues pertaining to Kartarpur Sahib have been resolved. I think they are moving in the right direction, and there is an expectation that there is a deadline out there which we have to meet. So I think we are confident of doing that. Regarding RCEP, there is, you see, RCEP is a trade agreement. Okay, a trade agreement must be defended and decided upon by its trade merits. Okay. There are diplomatic aspects, consequences, handling, etc. But the primary justification of a trade agreement cannot be diplomacy. It has to be trade. Just as, and generally the purpose of diplomacy is to actually serve, that particular domain. I mean, today if I have a national security interest at home, the purpose of diplomacy is to serve that national security interest. I mean, national security will not adjust to diplomacy. Diplomacy has to serve national security. So I think we need to be clear what is the role of diplomacy here, and that applies as well to this particular example. Finally, on the question you asked me about the Pope, I honestly don't know. I don't want to, give an answer which is erroneous.
One last question, because you have been raising your hand from the beginning. Aditya? Just one, yeah.
My question, I'm trying to not be repetitive, but Minister Jaishankar is on Kashmir. Over the last 1 month, we've seen Ministry of External Affairs and the NSA engage with the foreign media. Are you concerned about the media reportage in the foreign press about Kashmir? Because you say that the foreign countries have been supporting the abrogation of 370 or as an internal matter. Thank you.
Look, diplomacy is largely, not exclusively, an intergovernmental exercise. Okay, so most of the people I deal with directly are people in the government. So that was broadly what I was referring to out there. Having said that, of course, I mean, we all know how important press is, including press of other countries. So now, in terms of how the reporting is going, look, people are entitled to have views. Someone like me is entitled to have views on their views. And I've noticed two things. One point I made earlier, that I have very rarely seen a story from anybody which brings out the fact that 370 was a temporary provision of the Constitution. In fact, it's interesting. I mean, all of you need to Google this and see, how many people actually have reported that. Because somewhere that is at the heart of the issue. Similarly, it's made out sometimes as though we did something on August 5th which terribly complicated a situation, with the assumption that things were normal and happy before August 5th. Now, you all know the situation in Jammu and Kashmir before August 5th. And I mean, yesterday before the Honorable Supreme Court, I mean, government laid out the situation with very graphic and very disturbing numbers. So, I think people, I don't want to make this sound like a criticism, but my observation as a very avid follower and reader of the media would be that, it would be fair to take some of these sort of facts into account. If you're reporting something very serious, to do the necessary diligence for that. Not make sweeping judgments necessarily based on what is a momentary impression at the moment. But having said that, this I would say there's a variety of reporting. I would not paint everybody with the same brush. But I have seen, I mean, there would be a certain segment of reporting for which my observations will apply.
Thank you very much, sir. It's not obviously possible to accommodate all the questions. We have covered broadly most of the topical questions which are, which you guys asked us all the time. Thank you, sir, and thank you all for joining. Please come outside in the foyer for high tea. Thank you.